Did you know that over 1.2 million immigrants in the UK are now living with no access to public funds, and thousands are being separated from their families due to new visa rules? Imagine working full-time, paying taxes, and still being told you can't bring your children to live with you. Or being forced to leave the country just because your job doesn't meet a new salary requirement. In 2025, something has shifted, and not for the better. From rising costs to silent surveillance, immigrants are facing more obstacles than ever before. But what's really going on behind these changes? And who is being affected the most? The answers may surprise you, and they reveal a side of the UK immigration system few people ever see. Number 1. Stricter visa rules and salary thresholds. The UK government has introduced tougher visa regulations in 2025, making it more difficult for immigrants to qualify for legal entry or remain in the country. One of the most significant changes is the increased minimum salary threshold for skilled worker visas. Previously, applicants needed to earn around £26,200, but the new threshold has been raised to £38,700 for most jobs. This change instantly disqualifies thousands of migrant workers, especially those in social care, hospitality, and retail, from staying in the UK or bringing family members. The government claims this is to reduce dependency on foreign labor, but it's left many people scrambling to meet unrealistic financial demands. The impact of this policy is especially severe for essential workers. Nurses, care assistants, and support staff are vital to the UK's aging population, yet many of these roles fall well below the new salary requirement. Even when job offers are available, employers are unable to sponsor visas under the new guidelines. For migrants already working in the UK, the rule changes mean they may be forced to leave once their current visa expires, despite having contributed for years. Many are now seeking second jobs or negotiating with employers, hoping to bridge the income gap before it's too late. The emotional toll is profound. Families face uncertainty, financial pressure, and fear of deportation. Some have had to cancel plans to bring over spouses or children. Others are being forced to uproot their lives after building homes, careers, and communities in the UK. Advocacy groups argue that these policies ignore the real economic value migrants bring, focusing instead on populist narratives. For many immigrants, the message in 2025 is clear: your work is welcome, but your presence is not, unless you can afford to pay the price. Number 2. Reduced rights for dependents. In 2025, the UK government has tightened restrictions on dependent visas, making it increasingly difficult for immigrants to live with their families. Previously, it was common for skilled workers and international students to bring spouses and children under dependent routes. Now, that privilege is significantly limited. Care workers, for instance, are no longer allowed to sponsor family members at all. Even those who still qualify must meet higher income thresholds, often beyond the reach of average earners. The impact is deeply personal. Families are being separated, and many immigrants are being forced to choose between economic opportunity and emotional well-being. These changes are affecting thousands of people, particularly in sectors where immigrants make up the backbone of the workforce. Imagine being a nurse or care assistant working long hours under pressure, knowing your children are growing up thousands of miles away. The stress is magnified for international students, who now face tougher visa conditions, preventing them from bringing spouses unless enrolled in a government-sponsored PhD program or meeting high salary standards. What was once a pathway to settle and build a life together has become a lonely, uncertain journey for many. Beyond emotional hardship, there are financial consequences. Immigrants who could previously rely on dual-income households now bear the full burden alone. They also face higher living costs, childcare issues, and social isolation without the support of their loved ones. Many are struggling with mental health challenges, made worse by homesickness and instability. Critics say this policy undermines family unity, a principle previously protected in UK immigration law. In 2025, having a job is no longer enough. You must prove you're not just self-sufficient, but also able to afford the luxury of love and connection across borders. Number 3. Rising cost of living. The cost of living crisis in the UK has escalated sharply in 2025, affecting everyone. But immigrants are facing a double burden. While inflation has pushed up prices for housing, food, and transportation across the board, migrants are often limited to low-paying jobs, many of which fall below the new skilled worker salary threshold. On top of that, many immigrants regularly send remittances back home, which means their already stretched income is divided further. What remains is often barely enough to survive in cities like London, Birmingham, or Manchester, where even a single room can cost over £700 a month. Basic necessities are becoming luxuries. Grocery prices have jumped by over 12%, utilities have become more expensive, and public transportation continues to increase in cost, especially for those commuting long distances to work. Immigrants with no recourse to public funds are hit hardest, as they cannot access housing benefits, child support, or income relief programs. This leaves them vulnerable to homelessness and food insecurity, even when employed full-time. Many are working multiple jobs, sacrificing rest, education, and family life just to keep the lights on. The psychological toll is mounting. Immigrants face the daily pressure of survival without the safety nets available to citizens. For students, rising tuition fees and living expenses make education feel like a trap, not an opportunity. For workers, the dream of building a better life in the UK is now overshadowed by debt, burnout, and despair. Advocacy groups warn that without urgent reforms, the country risks exploiting immigrant labor while denying them basic dignity. In 2025, survival isn't just about working hard, it's about navigating a system that makes life unaffordable, even for those who give their all. Number 4. Limited access to public funds. In 2025, thousands of immigrants in the UK continue to live under the immigration condition known as No Recourse to Public Funds, NRPF. This policy bars individuals from accessing most welfare benefits, including universal credit, housing assistance, and child support. Even in times of crisis, like illness, job loss, or domestic abuse, those with NRPF are often left without help. The policy applies to many types of visas, including spousal, student, and work permits, and it creates an environment where immigrants must survive without the social safety nets that citizens rely on during tough times. This restriction forces immigrants into extremely vulnerable positions. A single mother working on a visa with NRPF, for example, has no access to government support if she loses her job. Families facing eviction can't get help with housing. And for those dealing with medical emergencies or mental health struggles, the options are even more limited. While charities try to fill the gap, demand far outweighs resources, and many migrants end up living in overcrowded housing, unsafe conditions, or even on the streets. The fear of being penalized or deported for seeking help leads many to suffer in silence. The long-term effects are deeply damaging. Children in immigrant families with NRPF often grow up in poverty, despite their parents working full-time. Adults are pushed into underground economies, risking exploitation just to earn enough to survive. Critics argue that the policy is not only inhumane, but also economically short-sighted, as it prevents people from becoming stable, contributing members of society. In 2025, the NRPF condition is more than a legal clause. It's a barrier to basic dignity, forcing immigrants to navigate life without a safety net, regardless of how long they've lived or worked in the UK. Number 5. Language barriers and policy shifts. In 2025, the UK has raised its English language requirements for several visa categories, making it harder for immigrants, especially spouses, parents, and older dependents, to pass the necessary exams. These new standards apply not only during the initial visa application but also during renewals and indefinite leave to remain applications. The result? Many long-term residents are now facing deportation or visa refusal, simply because they struggle with standardized tests that don't reflect their real-world language use. The shift is presented as a way to improve integration, but for many, it feels like an unfair hurdle rather than genuine support. The reality is more complex than just learning English. Many immigrants, especially from countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Somalia, or Syria, have limited access to affordable language classes. Those working long hours or caring for children rarely have the time to attend formal courses. And while some do manage to improve their language skills over time, the high cost and rigid structure of approved tests create added pressure. Failing the test doesn't just mean embarrassment. It can mean losing your legal status, being separated from family, or having to leave a country you've called home for years. This language barrier goes beyond paperwork. It affects job opportunities, access to health care, and the ability to advocate for one's rights. Without strong language support, immigrants can feel isolated, unheard, and powerless. Activists have called for community-based language programs, better funding for ESOL classes, and more flexibility in assessment standards. But in 2025, these demands remain largely unmet. For many, the message is clear: unless you can read, write, and speak perfect English, your future in the UK remains uncertain, no matter how much you've already contributed. Number 6. Discrimination and hostile environment policies. In 2025, the hostile environment, a set of immigration enforcement strategies introduced in the 2010s, continues to shape the daily lives of immigrants across the UK. Originally designed to deter undocumented migration, this policy has expanded into a widespread system of checks, suspicion, and surveillance. Landlords, employers, NHS staff, and even school administrators are required to verify immigration status, turning everyday interactions into moments of anxiety and judgment. For immigrants, especially those from non-white or non-Western backgrounds, this often leads to racial profiling, harassment, and routine exclusion. Discrimination isn't always loud. It's often quiet, systematic, and exhausting. An immigrant with legal status might be denied a rental flat because a landlord is unsure about their visa. A job applicant with a foreign-sounding name might be overlooked, not because of qualifications, but because of subtle xenophobic bias. Even in hospitals, patients have reported being asked to prove their right to free care, creating fear around accessing urgent treatment. These daily frictions create a sense of never fully belonging, even for those who've lived and worked in the UK for years. The long-term consequences are serious. Talented professionals leave for other countries, students rethink their futures, and families withdraw from public life. Instead of fostering integration, the hostile environment breeds distrust, division, and trauma. Community groups have called for a repeal of these policies, citing their damaging impact on mental health and social cohesion. But the political climate in 2025 remains resistant to change. For many immigrants, every phone call, job application, or GP visit carries a risk, not of doing something wrong, but of being treated as if you don't belong. This quiet, daily struggle chips away at their dignity, security, and hope for a stable life in the UK. Number 7. Healthcare access barriers. Although the UK's National Health Service, NHS, is praised globally, immigrants in 2025 are facing growing barriers when trying to access essential healthcare. One major hurdle is the Immigration Health Surcharge, IHS, a fee that migrants must pay as part of their visa applications. This surcharge has now reached £1,035 per person per year, meaning a family of 4 could be paying over £4,000 upfront, just to use a system they'll already be taxed on. For low-income migrants or students, this cost is crippling and often discourages people from seeking care at all. Even for those who've paid the surcharge, navigating the NHS can be overwhelming and uneven. Language barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and a lack of tailored information leave many immigrants confused or afraid to use health services. In some cases, hospital administrators request additional proof of immigration status, causing delays or outright refusals. This breeds fear, especially among undocumented individuals, who often avoid clinics until their condition becomes an emergency. As a result, treatable illnesses turn into serious complications, costing more for both the patient and the system. The emotional impact is just as severe. Living in a country where you fear judgment or deportation just for seeing a doctor creates a climate of chronic stress. Pregnant women skip prenatal appointments, elderly immigrants endure pain in silence, and mental health goes largely unaddressed. Public health experts warn that these barriers undermine not just individual well-being, but also community health and safety. Healthcare should be a basic human right, yet for many migrants in the UK, it feels like a privilege tied to paperwork and payment. In 2025, staying healthy isn't just about medicine, it's about navigating a system that feels increasingly unwelcoming, unaffordable, and unfair. Number 8. Increased surveillance and data sharing. In 2025, immigrants in the UK are living under heightened digital surveillance as the government expands its use of technology-driven immigration enforcement. From the moment a visa is applied for, a digital trail begins, linking data from employment records, NHS visits, bank accounts, and even school enrollments. These systems are designed to flag inconsistencies or overstays, but they also create a constant sense of being watched. For many migrants, everyday actions, like opening a bank account or changing a job, now carry the looming fear of a visa review or legal scrutiny. One of the most concerning developments is the use of automated decision-making tools in visa processing. Algorithms now scan applications for risk factors, often based on vague metrics like country of origin or gaps in employment. A minor clerical error, such as a misspelled name or missed document, can trigger an automatic rejection, sometimes without the chance for appeal. These systems lack human oversight, meaning real lives are being decided by code, not compassion or context. Advocacy groups have labeled this approach digital discrimination, especially against migrants from lower-income nations. The effect on immigrants is deeply personal. People are becoming afraid to engage with institutions, worried their information might be shared with enforcement bodies. Teachers are hesitant to support students with irregular status, and patients delay care over data fears. This climate of suspicion doesn't just affect undocumented migrants. It impacts anyone with temporary status, pending applications, or mixed-status families. Experts warn that mass surveillance erodes trust in public systems and creates a culture of silence and isolation. In 2025, the question isn't just, do you have the right paperwork? It's, can you live your life without triggering a system that sees you as a threat? Number 9. Lack of legal support. In 2025, access to immigration legal aid in the UK has become a serious obstacle for many migrants trying to navigate a complex and ever-changing system. Years of funding cuts have left a critical shortage of qualified solicitors and caseworkers, especially outside major cities. Many free legal clinics are overwhelmed, with waiting lists stretching for months. For immigrants facing urgent visa deadlines, detainment, or deportation threats, the lack of timely legal advice can be life-altering. One missed form or misunderstood regulation can lead to loss of status, income, or the right to stay. Immigration law in the UK is notoriously complex, involving multiple visa types, evolving policies, and strict deadlines. Many migrants, especially asylum seekers, students, or low-income workers, don't have the financial means to pay for private legal services, which can cost thousands of pounds. Even when legal help is available, language barriers, lack of trust, and unfamiliarity with the system create additional barriers to justice. This legal gap leaves people unprotected and vulnerable, especially during appeals or detention reviews, where proper representation can mean the difference between staying or being deported. The ripple effect is severe. Families are torn apart, long-term residents are forced to leave, and people live in constant fear of making a mistake. Without clear guidance, many avoid updating their status or even contacting the Home Office, fearing repercussions. Activists have called for the restoration of legal aid funding, better training for immigration officers, and a more humane review process. But in 2025, the legal landscape remains tilted against those who need help most. For many migrants, the justice system feels less like a support structure and more like a labyrinth designed to confuse, delay, and ultimately reject. Number 10. Tighter asylum and refugee policies. In 2025, the UK government has implemented some of its toughest asylum laws in decades, drastically changing how refugees are processed and protected. Under new legislation, asylum seekers who arrive in the UK via irregular routes, such as by boat or lorry, are automatically considered inadmissible, regardless of their personal history or circumstances. Many are now being sent to third countries, like Rwanda, under controversial offshoring deals. These rapid deportations happen before claims are fully heard, leaving people fleeing war, persecution, or human trafficking with no chance to explain their case. The conditions for those still in the UK are far from humane. Asylum seekers are often placed in large, overcrowded detention centers or housed in unsafe accommodations for months, sometimes years, while waiting for their cases to be processed. They're banned from working, forced to live on less than £8 per day, and restricted in their ability to access health care, education, or legal aid. Mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and PTSD are widespread, yet support services remain critically underfunded. These policies treat vulnerable people not as survivors, but as threats to be managed, silenced, or removed. Public opinion is deeply divided. While some see these laws as necessary to protect borders, others view them as a moral failure and a betrayal of the UK's humanitarian commitments. The United Nations and multiple human rights organizations have criticized the UK for violating international asylum laws, yet enforcement continues. For those seeking safety and dignity, the UK in 2025 no longer feels like a refuge, it feels like a fortress. In this climate, the right to seek protection has been overshadowed by politics, fear, and bureaucracy, turning hope into uncertainty, detention, or forced displacement. In 2025, life for immigrants in the UK has become a complex maze of restrictions, rising costs, emotional strain, and legal uncertainty. What was once a pathway to opportunity now feels more like an obstacle course designed to exhaust, isolate, and exclude. These changes don't just impact paperwork, they affect real families, real futures, and real lives. And while some of these policies are framed as economic or security measures, the human cost is impossible to ignore. Every visa denied, every family separated, and every asylum seeker deported tells a story of a system that's growing colder and more unforgiving. But this isn't just about statistics or policies, it's about people. People who contribute to the economy, care for the vulnerable, pay taxes, and build communities. Their stories deserve to be heard, and their struggles shouldn't be hidden behind political headlines. The question isn't just what is happening, but why it's being allowed to happen, and who benefits from the silence. As we move forward, conversations like these are more important than ever. Not just to inform, but to inspire empathy, awareness, and change. Have you or someone you know been affected by these immigration policies? We want to hear your story. Drop a comment below, and let's make the invisible visible. And if you found this eye-opening, go check out our previous video where we uncover more untold truths behind global migration shifts. It's packed with insight you don't want to miss. We put an incredible amount of time, research, and care into each video to bring you stories that matter. Your support means everything to us, so please, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it helps us keep going and growing.